What's up guys, Darius here back with another video, and this one is the Game Masters discussion. This one might be a little shorter than the other videos because I just have a few things to talk about, to mention. I've heard your comments, I know we're going to talk about those, and I'll try to explain my thought process behind the video, behind Accor and the chariot race, and also try to rectify some of the mistakes and some of the things that I've omitted or maybe didn't think about thoroughly in this episode. So let's just get right into it. Alright, so the first thing that I want to mention, that I want to talk about, something that only one of you has actually mentioned, was the kidnapping itself, right? So in the episode, in part 1, the whole thing got started because you got kidnapped. You got kidnapped by a bunch of horses to then be sold to slavery. Now that theoretically could not have happened because the story took place in the Roman Empire. And in the Roman Empire, this was outlawed, so that you're not allowed to kidnap somebody and then sell them to slavery, much less an Egyptian, somebody that was part of the Roman Empire. When it was the times of the Roman Republic, right, because the Roman Empire started off as a kingdom, then became a republic, then eventually became an empire. During the times of the Republic, that could have been possible, you could have done it, but we were in the Roman Empire and you could not do it. The reason why I set it up like that, the reason why I had the guy Accor being kidnapped, was that originally there was supposed to be this whole backstory as to how his family, right, his family was very rich, very wealthy. They had sold him into slavery, and those horses that kidnapped him were actually paid by the family to do so. So in that case, it would have been possible. The only thing was that if I did that, the episode would have been too long. I would not have been able to finish it on time. So I decided to sort of drop the whole backstory and still go ahead with the kidnapping. Which is why at some point, if you listen closely, Ranep, the guy that eventually buys you as a slave, he says that your purchase, your kidnapping, everything was already planned. And Raneb was an Egyptian as well. He was the one that the family had originally used to kidnap you, to sell you into slavery. And once again, there was like this whole backstory that I wanted to play off with, but I didn't, simply for time purposes. So in that case, that should explain why the kidnapping took place, why the kidnapping happened, why everything went the way it did, and how the story eventually got started. And the second thing that I want to talk about is, of course, the ending. The priest ending specifically. A lot of you were not... first of all, it was a tight vote. At first, I thought you guys were going to pick the spectators because I was watching the vote very early on once I posted the video. And a few people were voting for spectator, which I thought was cool. You guys were going to succeed the quest. But then somewhere along the lines, the tides have turned and then the priest had the better option. And some of you were not satisfied with this ending. And I have to agree. Look, I'm one person. I do all of this. I do the writing, the creation of the story, the script, the filming, the editing, the sound effects. I do everything, right? And I have to do these. I set myself a goal to do these every 2 weeks. So you guys get 2 adventures per month. So that means I have to create a whole story and make it fit within the real historical narrative every single 2 weeks, right? And I have like this whole structure of how I do it. But because I do that, because I do all of those things, sometimes it gets hard to think about everything that could go wrong or all the options that a story could go in. So oftentimes what ends up happening is you guys think of things that I didn't think about, which is why like I read your comments all the time, and sometimes when you guys give reasons for why you vote, well, I'm like, oh, I didn't quite think about that. But then again, like my reasoning usually makes sense. And to be fair, like with the priest and everything, first of all, magic is real. So I want you guys to know that in every single quest that we do, magic is real as long as it follows something historical. So for example, let's take religion. Religion is the best example because religion would be a form of magic. If it's a religion that people actually believed in, they believed it to be real, then that will become the real magic in this game. So for example, in the Roman Empire, the real magic would be all the Roman gods and all the things that they can do. In Greek mythology, it would be the Greek gods and the mythology and all of that. Like, we've seen it. So in that sense, magic was real. So the question was not really a trick question. It was more so, which one do you think would be the better option for you to succeed the quest? And like, if you chose magic, I have to apologize because I did make it a little bit cheap, a little bit cheesy. I mean, Raneb was smart, you were smart as well. Like, you had experience in trading, like you were no dumb people, right? So like, you could have used the spell earlier on in the race to destabilize Diocles, maybe when it was like a turn with all the other chariots to make it look like it was one of the chariots that knocked him over. You could have done that. I didn't think about it because it was very hard to sort of make a choice that was kind of fair, that was like that you could pick either or, right? Like that's my goal with these choices, is to make them as hard as possible, I guess, as equal as possible, so that you have incentive for both. And it was hard to come up with a choice revolving around the chariot race that fit within the story, that fit also within my time limits for each episode, right? I try to make the first episode like 15 minutes and the second, the two parts, make them somewhere around 10 minutes. Then I have to find some sort of like comparable story with the both choices. So it's hard to make choices that actually work and that fit all of that criteria. So I had to make a few sacrifices here and there. And the sacrifice that I made was that you used the magic spell at the end of the race, and that caused you to be given away by the person who saw you, right? And also, by the way, the person who saw you, that was also cheap, because I literally had no other way for people somehow to have some sort of proof as to whether or not it was you. Because I mean, sure, you did a spell, but how could they link the spell to you and how could they prove it? Well, because of the lead tablet, because the fact that somebody saw you actually going there. I do admit that was cheap, but I was kind of limited in the choices that that I could make. And I mean, the spectators was the same thing. The only difference was that it was legal. Spectators were often encouraged to throw nails, and that's why I had that option be the successful option for this quest. But then again, you guys also gave arguments for the spectators, which totally makes sense, and there's things that I didn't think about, like the fact that if the spectators throw nails, first of all, it's nails, like the odds of the nails actually hurting the chariot enough for it to cause the crash are pretty slim. That was my mistake, I didn't quite think about that, but at the same time, what if they threw the nails and they hit you and then you crashed instead, right? Like that could have also been an option. You guys also mentioned things about bribing or people being corrupt or like people backstabbing you, which I mean, I agree, it makes sense, but like you paid, in either case, you paid the priest or you paid the spectators to be on your side. So unless somebody else paid them more to specifically go against you, which in the story there was nobody that would have really had an incentive to do so, then there was no way that they would kind of go against you or go behind your back, because you gave them the coin and all their incentive was based on the coin. You pay them for something, they're gonna do it. And also something you guys mentioned was that Diocles was a crowd favorite, which is very true. Like the crowd wanted him to win, which I understand the argument, but at the same time, if you betted against him, you could make a lot of money. So there's people who also had incentives for other teams to win, right? There was a lot of betting going on, there was a lot of rivalry, and a lot of people had incentive for a lot of teams to win. So it wasn't only Diocles that was the star. Plus, Diocles was not the only chariot racing star that was to ever exist, right? There were others. We don't have that many documents, but we do know that these people were seen as like superstars, as idols, and people like were for them, right? So it wasn't only Diocles, but to keep it simple, to save time, to make it easier on myself, I only talked about Diocles. Because I mean, think about it. If I was to talk about everybody else that was significant at these races, well, that would have been like a 1 hour long video with a bunch of information that was not really pertinent to the story. So that's kind of where my thought process was with this whole thing. Other than that, I don't really have anything else to talk about. I mean, it was a really cool story. I really enjoyed teaching you guys a little bit about the Roman Empire, the chariot races, the Roman baths, for example, the city of Rome itself, and also its relationship with Egypt, Roman Egypt, where you, Akor, the main character, you come from. Overall, I do want to apologize for the mistakes that I've done. I hope that they weren't too bad. I hope that the episode was still fun and that it was still engaging for you to watch as a player in the game. And I promise I will do better next time. I will think more about the possible alternatives of these choices, and I'll try to always improve and try to always give you guys the best videos that I can possibly produce for YouTube. I also want to thank you guys for actually voting and watching. We had a 64% voting ratio on the first episode, which means that out of the like 300 people as of recording this that watched the video, 64% of you voted, and then like there was more views on the second part than the amount of votes, which tells me that everybody who voted actually watched, or at least the large majority of you. So for that, thank you so much. Thank you for engaging. Thank you for leaving comments. giving your reasons why you're voting. Thank you for discussing amongst yourselves, and for generally being a super awesome community that you just engage with the content that I put out. So that's really all that I wanted to talk about. I'm currently working on the next story. It's very interesting. It's happening in ancient history, and it's gonna take you to some cool otherworldly places, in the sense that you're not gonna be on the surface of the earth. Let's just leave it at that. So be excited for that. It's coming out in 2 weeks. So with that being said, that was it. My name has been Darius. You've been watching the Game Master discussion. Thank you so much for being here, for watching this, and I will see you in the next quest, in the next adventure. Stay tuned.